Hilchos Shegagos Perek Shneim Asar, the laws of sacrifices for inadvertent transgressions, chapter 12. From here on, we start kind of a new section in this set of laws, a special carbon related to the High Court. It's a very unique law. There's actually a whole tractate in the Babylonian Talmud on this. It's called Maseches Hayrios, very small tractate, but very, very deep. And it discusses the idea that if the High Court, if the Sanhedrin makes an erroneous ruling in halacha, and then they realize their mistake, even if everybody else acted based on their ruling, everybody else is exempt, the court has to bring the sacrifice. So leadership has to take responsibility when people follow them and make mistakes. And there's a lot of details to it, and that's going to be coming in the next couple of days. Today is probably one of the shortest chapters of Rambam. It only has 2 halachot. You can count on your finger how many chapters in Rambam only have 2 halachas. And it's basically the groundwork for what's coming in the next couple of days. So the Rambam says like this, Halacha Aleph, Kol davar shechayavin al shegagos chatos kvua. Any sin that if an individual did it by mistake, he would have to bring a standard sin offering. Remember, the last couple of days we had different types of offering for atonements for sin. The main bulk of it was the chatos kvua, the standard sin offering. We also discussed an asham. We also discussed the carbon oil v'yered. Now we're going back to the chatas. So any sin of those 43 sins for which an individual would have to bring a standard sin offering, im shagagu beis din hagadol b'hira. If the High Court, and this is reference to the 71 judges of the Sanhedrin, if they made an inadvertent mistake in their ruling, v'hoiru lehatira, and they gave out a ruling that one of these 43 prohibitions is actually permitted. And we'll soon see it's a little more nuanced than that. But let's just assume it means totally permitting it. Right? There's like forbidden fats, let's say, or one of the sins, and they say, you know what, forbidden fats is permitted. Everybody listens to the rabbis. So all the nation hears this ruling comes out from the High Court, and they act inadvertently based on the ruling. And the people did these acts relying on the court. 2 weeks ago, it was totally forbidden. Then the notice came out from the court that it's permitted. So everyone's like, okay, if the rabbis say permitted, it's permitted. And they're acting based on the ruling that they received from the rabbis. And then the court finds out that they made a mistake. The rabbis take a look. They realize there was a complete mistake. So, Harei Beis Din Chayavin Lahavi Karban Chatos Al Shegagosan Bahira. Now the court is obligated to bring a sin offering for their inadvertent transgression of ruling, even if they didn't do anything. Even if they never take action. But the people did. We don't look at, in these laws, we don't look at whether the court did anything or not, whether they did or they didn't do it. All we care about is their ruling. Everybody else is exempt from a sacrifice, even though they're the ones that actually did it. Because they hung themselves on the court. So fascinatingly, you have a case where one Jew does a sin, and another Jew has to carry the punishment. Why? Because that other Jew gave the instruction. It gives you a lesson even today. You give an instruction to somebody else, and they follow your actions because you said so, you carry the responsibility. Same with the court. The court gave the ruling, they must bring the sacrifice, not the people. Now, we're going to see in a moment in the next halacha that actually, in order for this to happen, 9 conditions have to be met. There are 9 preconditions in order for the court to be obligated. But the Rambam first gives you the general ruling before giving you the specifics. Let's assume all the conditions were met, and the court needs to bring a sacrifice. Umahu hakarban shemevi'en al shegagazu. So what exactly is the sacrifice which they bring for this inadvertence? So, like when it came to the sin offerings itself, there's a difference between idol worship and all the other sins. So here too for the court. If it was a matter related to idol worship, that's what the court made a mistake about and ruled erroneously. Every tribe needs to provide a bull and a goat. A bull is a burnt offering, and the goat is a sin offering. So 2 animals per tribe, a total of 24 animals. The karban zeh hu ha'amur b'parsha shlach lecha. This is the sacrifice spoken about in the portion of shlach lecha in the book of Bamidbar, Shenemar, where it says v'haya im me'enei ha'eda ne'asasa lishgaga. That if it will be that the mistake, the inadvertence came from the eyes of the community. Who's the eyes of the community? The rabbis, the leadership. They're the ones that have the vision. They're the ones that direct the Jewish people. And the verse is talking about making a mistake about mitzvahs of Hashem, even though it doesn't say clearly that it's talking about idol worship. We have a tradition that this verse is talking about a mistake related to idol worship. So it says, if it was a mistake from the court, so look at the next part of the verse. The Rambam doesn't quote it, but it says, one bull for a burnt offering, and one goat for a sin offering. So that's how you know that if it's idol worship related, 2 animals per tribe. But then, if it's any other of the 42 sins, which you would be obligated to excision if you did it purposely, sin offering if you did it by mistake, and now the court makes an erroneous ruling, maybe kol shevet v'shevet par chatas. So every tribe only has to bring 1 animal, a bull, but this time the bull is the sin offering. When it comes to idol worship, the bull is the burnt offering, goat is the sin offering. Here, any other sin, the bull is the sin offering. This is the portion in the book of Vayikra, in the portion of Vayikra, where the Torah says, "V'im kol adas Yisrael yishgu," shenemar v'im kol adas Yisrael yishgu. If the entire congregation of Israel makes a mistake. So the Gemara learns from here, what do you mean the entire congregation makes a mistake? How does a whole Jewish community make a mistake? Obviously, because they were listening to the Beis Din. The court made the mistake. They gave the ruling. In any other area of Jewish law, right? V'nelam davar me'enei hakol. The verse continues. The Rambam doesn't quote it, but one matter gets forgotten from the eyes of the community. Again, this expression, the eyes. The rabbis being the eyes, they can see for the rest of the community. And then the verse continues, and it says, "V'hikrivu hakol par ben bakar lechatas." They have to bring a bull for a sin offering. So this portion is talking about any other sin. In Nimtzei Salam, it says the Rambam. Now let's summarize it. It turns out that you learn. If the high court made a mistake in ruling about idol worship, the entire Jewish people collectively has to bring 24 animals. Here you can see a depiction of it. They're all lined up. See, there's 12 bulls over here lined up, with each tribe has a representative, and they're all in the temple doing this special ceremony. So everybody would have to bring 12 bulls as burnt offerings, 12 goats as sin offerings. Vehem nisrafais, they're all burnt. Vehem nisrafais, and they are burnt, they meaning the goats. The sin offering goats. Obviously the burnt offerings are burnt, they're burnt offerings. But even the goats are burnt. Shaharei dama nichnas lifnim, because part of the ceremony was to bring their blood inside. Anytime a chatas offering has its blood brought inside, the temple structure, nobody eats it, it's burnt. Vehem nikrain sirei avodah, they're called the goats of idol worship. Being b'shara mitzvah shagagov, if it's any other mitzvah where the court was erroneous, mevi'in shnei masar parim chatayis, you bring simply 12 bulls as sin offerings. Also ve'hein nisrafais, mipnei shadamam nichnas lifnim, they're also burnt because the blood goes inside. Same thing. B'chol par mehen, every one of these bulls, nikra par helem davar shel tzibur, is called the bull of the community brought over the concealment of a thing. Helem davar means you forgot something. Because the court forgot something, so the entire community is responsible. Shenemar, as it says, "V'hikrivu hakohol," the community has to offer it. Kol kohol v'kohol. Every community, who is called a community in Jewish literature, v'chol shevet v'shevet karei kohol. Every tribe is called a community. Shenemar, as it says, "Vayamoid Yehoshaphat bikal Yehuda." Yehoshaphat, one of the kings, he stood in the kahal, in the congregation of Judah. Just one shevet, just the shevet of Yehuda is already called a kohol. So since Torah says every kohol has to bring an offering when the court makes a mistake, that means that 12 tribes have to bring 12 different offerings. Says the Rambam, "Bein she'asu kol Yisrael shebe'eretz Yisrael, al pi beis din shehiru." Whether it's all the Jewish people living in Israel acted based on the ruling of the court. Bein she'asu reiv Yisrael, whether it was the majority of the community, as long as more than 50% did the sin, af al pi shehin miut minyan hashvatim, even if they're the lesser number of tribes. The population is always changing. So say you have 12 tribes, and the population of 5 of the tribes, a minority of the tribes, makes up a majority of the Jewish population. Bein she'asur reiv hashvatim, af al pi shehin miut kol Yisrael. Or the opposite, you could have a majority of tribes that are the minority of the population. You have 7 tribes, but the small tribes, so the total number is less than 50%. But either type of majority suffices. Right? We just had the elections. You have the popular vote, you have the electoral vote. Same thing. Whether you have the popular Jewish people, right? In other words, 51% of the people, or the tribes. Still, Mivian, Kiminyan, Kol Hashvatim, Par Lechol Shevet V'Shevet, you bring according to the majority, according to the number of all the tribes. In other words, everyone has to participate, even the ones that didn't do the sin. One bull per every tribe. U'ba'avodazara, Par V'Sora Lechol Shevet V'Shevet, and with idol worship, a bull and a goat for every tribe. Sha'af Elu Shaloi Chatu, Mivian Al Yidei HaChaitim. Because even the Jews that didn't sin have to bring for the ones that did sin, because the majority sin. Once the majority of Jews sin, everyone's responsible. Afilu asa shevet echad bilvad v'hureiv hakol. The Talmud asks this question: what happens if you have a very disparate population where one tribe makes up 51% of the population? They had tons of children, let's just say, and there was just massive tribe. Everybody else is small. That's enough. If that entire tribe does the sin based on the court's ruling, the entire community has to bring 12 bulls, and if it's idol worship, 12 and 12. 12 bulls, 12 goats. Because it's the majority that counts. Once you have the tipping point of the majority, everyone has to bring a sacrifice, for every tribe. Halacha beis. Beis din shenistapik lahen, im shagagu b'hira or lo shagagu. If the court is in doubt whether they issued an erroneous ruling or not, einan chayavin ba'asham talui, they're not obligated to bring the doubtful guilt offering, which an individual has to bring if he's in doubt whether you did a sin. Shenemar, because it says, back to the other verse, v'noida hachatas. The sin has to become known. Ad shetivada v'achar kach yischayvu b'korban. They have to first become fully and certainly and definitely known, and then they're going to be obligated in a sacrifice. Kameshi Yisbor, as will be explained in the next few days. And now that Rambam gives us the 9 conditions that are necessary for the court to be liable. Bamed dvarim amurim, shebeis din chayavim, ve'elu ha'osim al piyah and pturim min hakorban. When do we say that it's the court who's liable and everybody acting on their word is exempt from a sacrifice? Because this is a very special rule if you think about it, right? Usually every person carries his own punishments. You did a sin, you have to be the one to blame yourself and take responsibility and bring the sacrifice. Here we're saying that the obligation is transferred to the court. Because you relied on the court, you can push it on to them. They have to bring a sacrifice and not you. So when do we say this? In a very, very specific case. And the Rambam today is just going to give us the 9 conditions, and tomorrow and the next day elaborate on them. So here they are. Number 1, kishahayu hamoidim beis din hagadol shel shivim ve'echad. First of all, the court that's issuing the ruling has to be the high court, the 71 judges court. Not any of the lower courts. If a lower court issues a ruling and you listen to them, that's your fault. You have to bring a sacrifice, not them. Number 2, v'yiyeh reish yeshiva imahen b'hoira. The reish yeshiva, that's the head of the Sanhedrin. There was always one person that was the head of the court. He needs to be there. Because sometimes, we'll see in the laws of the court, somebody can leave and they put somebody else in just for a temporary replacement. So you could have the 71 judges, but the head of the court is not there. He has to be there.
Pro tem.
Yes.
The pro tem, that's like a
Pro tem means stand-in, yeah. In this case, the head of the yeshiva, the head of the court has to be there. That's number 2. Number 3, v'yiyu kulan ru'uyin l'hayra. They all have to be fit to be on the court. Again, in the laws of courts, we're going to see a convert cannot serve on the court. A mamzer, born from a legitimate union, can serve on the court. How do they end up? There's another question. But if they were, let's just say, if they're on the court for whatever reason, and they make this erroneous ruling, these laws don't apply. Number 4, v'yit'u kulan oyruban b'davar zeh shehayru. Everybody has to be in on the mistake, or at least a majority. Because you could have, right? Some judges, they just have this instinct, it doesn't sound right. But the majority is going with it, so I'll go with it too. As long as the majority made a mistake, or all of them, that's a condition. Number 5, v'yayru b'feirush, v'yayimru la'am mutarin atem lasos. They have to clearly, verbally instruct the people, you are permitted to do this. They can't say, it's permitted. You go do it. You can go do this act. Also, if other people heard from the court, like this is before WhatsApp, before email, so let's say somebody heard from the court and he's telling all his friends. When he tells his friends, he has to tell them, you're allowed to do it. That's number 5. Number 6, v'yasu kol hakol le'rubay al piyam. The entire community, or the majority, in any of the scenarios mentioned before, has to act based on their words. If only a minority acts, the court isn't responsible. Number 7, v'yiyu ha'osim shegagim al pihem, Umidamim shahadavar shahayru by kadas hayru. The people acting, they have to be actually making a mistake. They have to actually believe that what the court said is true. If you have a very learned guy, yeah, and he hears the court issue the ruling, and he goes, I know they made a mistake. I know they're wrong, but I'm still going to do it, then you carry your own responsibility, because you didn't blame the court. You have to actually believe the court. Number 8, v'yoyru levatel miktsas ulekayim miktsas. The court has to be only partially uprooting a mitzvah. They have to leave part of it in place. So when I said before in the beginning of the chapter about forbidden fats, they cannot blanket statement permit all forbidden fats. They have to permit some and forbid some. And we'll see more examples of this in later days. Lo sheyakru kol haguf. They cannot uproot the entire body of a mitzvah. If they do, then every individual is responsible. And number 9, when they find out, they have to find out exactly what the mistake was. Not a variation of the mistake or part of it, exactly what the mistake was. If all of these scenarios were met, if all these conditions were met, that's where the court carries the responsibility. They have to bring the sacrifice. Everybody else acting on their word is exempt. But if even one of these ways is missing, if even one of these conditions is not met, then the court cannot be blamed. They are exempt from bringing a sacrifice. And any individual who made a mistake and acted has to bring a personal sin offering. So this special law is only if all the boxes are checked. If any boxes are unchecked, you carry the blame for your own sin, and to atone, you have to bring your own sin offering.